Cool. Just give everyone a few minutes to land. Excellent. All right, Watami, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, screen, stop sharing. Screen back in sharing. So our nation's story began at the dawn of time, and the First Nations people always have and always will occupy and care for this continent. I'd like to acknowledge the Darug people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I join you from today. And I'd like to pay respect to elders, both past, present, and emerging, from all the nations that you're joining us from today, and extend that respect to other First Nations people present with us virtually and those watching later. We are super excited to have everyone here today for our first data community call for education. Manasi, do you want to flick to the next slide? I would like to introduce our speakers today. My name is Megan. I work on the Microsoft education team here in Australia as what's called a modern workplace specialist. I am going to kick things off and wrap things up today. We have the amazing Cindy, who is in the background moderating the chat. If you have any questions, all you need to do is use that raise hand feature. She will bring you off mute and you'll be able to ask that question out loud. Of course, please don't hesitate to ask any questions you have directly into the Teams chat as well. We have Brad from Fusion5, who's going to be taking us through a fantastic demo and information around some great stuff happening out there in the edu world. And Manasi from Microsoft is actually going to kick things off. She's from our Dynamics and Power Platform team and focuses specifically on education. So thank you everyone for being here. And we're super excited to kick off, like I said, our first community call. We do have a Microsoft team that you can join if you're interested in continuing the conversation inside the team space. We've got a link to a form at the end if you'd like to join that, if you're not in there already. But yeah, we'll be kicking off these calls today, obviously, and then doing one every month from here on out. So, oh, sorry, every quarter, I think. Every month, I forget already. My brain's broken today. Is it every month, Manasi? I forget now.
We can do it every month.
Well, we'll see how excited people are. All right, so without further ado, I'll hand over to Manasi to kick off the call in earnest.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. As Megan mentioned, this is the first community call. So we're really looking forward to getting some feedback from everyone on the call in terms of how it went and what are some of the other cool things that you want to know about Power Platform. In terms of the agenda for today, I'll kick things off by just giving a bit of perspective around, why we're seeing so much demand around the low-code platform, and then doing a bit of an introduction into the Power Platform. As you may or may not be aware of, there are a lot of products within the Power Platform family, but today, we'll be picking a particular scenario that's quite relevant in the K-12 sector, at which point I will hand over to Fusion5 to showcase some of the amazing work that they've been doing in the K-12 sector, which would be mostly around parent portal, parent communications, and events management capability. So hoping that we can, wrap everything around 45-minute mark, just so that we can leave the last 5-10 minutes for some Q&A. To set the scene for our webinar today, I wanted to start off by talking about why we're seeing such a demand in the low-code platforms. Education organizations in Australia have had to embrace a lot of change and leverage modern learning and teaching solutions to really combat the effects of the pandemic. However, true digital transformation in the K-12 sector has still been quite slow. And there are a few reasons why we are still challenged. Tech talent limitations. While the demand for new applications increases by the day, the tech world is facing a talent shortage, which makes it really hard to keep up with the momentum of the pipeline of demand. We all know that ground-up software development takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money, specialist skills are required, and it may end up creating technical debt as we need to maintain the application and the infrastructure over time and really keep responding to the evolving requirements for that application. Surging digital demand. The demand for digital technology has increased over the past few years. And COVID-19 has really heightened that need for solutions that are faster, simpler, and easily available. So we feel that schools need better systems to make sense of their student data that's sitting across, various applications, utilize applications that really streamline their operations, and to provide better teacher support and services. And lastly, there are a lot of security and compliance risks that we still have to deal with. Building software in-house brings a host of security and compliance risks. So we need to make sure that there are enough investments put in place to ensure that these applications run seamlessly and don't have any data or security breaches. Having said all of that, if we look at the big number on the left-hand side of the screen, it's expected that 500 million new applications will be built in the next 5 years. That's more than all the applications that have been built in the last 40 years. And the only way with achieving that is actually through low-code platforms that really extend the capability from the developers into the hands of end users and what we call as citizen developers. Just expanding on that thought, if we think about the digital demand and the required skills and resources, traditionally, we often ended up only doing the black part of the graph. These were, these could have been initiatives that had business cases approved or high value initiatives, or where we had the required skills and resources. It's the blue bit that was essentially kind of like a missed opportunity because we never got around doing a rest of the digital demand. We never got to that. So what businesses really need today is a high productivity, low code development platform that helps them adapt and respond to rapid developments in real time. Rather than investing heavily in building software in-house, adopting low code development platform really helps non-technical users like you and me, to really innovate and help address some of those business challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. So let's look at a brief overview of the Power Platform and where it fits within the Microsoft ecosystem. We all are aware or have heard of Azure and Microsoft 365. These are essentially what we call as the fundamental building blocks within the Microsoft ecosystem, and for most organizations, because these are your building blocks around data, security, and identity. And Microsoft 365 extends to really how we actually capture unstructured information. That's through data that is stored in Excel, PowerPoint, Word, the interactions that we have in Teams, or the data that we store in SharePoint. Alongside that sits essentially what we call as Dynamics 365. Dynamics 365 is a platform that really provides that end-to-end structured business process applications, starting from parent or student-facing applications such as parent portals, recruitment, student enrollment or recruitment, personalized marketing or student services, all the way to back office operations around finance, HR, payroll, and operations. So when we think about Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 365 together, they essentially provide what we call as that left to right set of business applications, starting from capturing unstructured information all the way to structured information. In between Dynamics 365, M365, and Azure, we essentially have what we call as the innovation layer, and that's what we call as Power Platform. So Power Platform is your low-code development platform that would really address the gap of what Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 365 may not be able to achieve. And those are essentially, your bespoke custom applications that you build in-house, which are not achieved through software as a service type applications. So what exactly is included in Microsoft Power Platform? It is essentially a product family that delivers innovative business solutions across one seamlessly integrated platform. Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents are core products within the Power Platform family that allow organizations to quickly and easily build custom applications, automate business processes, and automate workflows to really track, visualize real-time business performance, and enable intelligent conversations. So the platform essentially provides that low-code interface for any user, and we call them as citizen developers to quickly create applications and really bring agility into that whole development process and let our citizens innovate. At the intersection of all these products is essentially what lies true digital transformation, because it really gives customers the power to innovate anywhere while really unlocking value everywhere. And at the core of Power Platform is essentially some key building blocks, and I'll talk through those key building blocks around data connectors, AI builder, accelerator solutions over the next couple of slides. I talked about citizen development in my last slide, but the spectrum of the capability provided by the Power Platform is quite broad. You can start with citizen development to help you create simple apps for personal productivity. But the platform is also made for pro developers to really transform processes and really build complex business applications, right? So citizen developers can create applications for personal productivity. However, developers can leverage the low-code platform to really build custom, more complex business applications that require, complex integration or have complex reference data architecture with a lot of agility. So let's look at the components of Power Platform in a bit more detail. The first product, Power Apps, that I mentioned earlier, is essentially a tool set of low-code app development. There are three styles of applications within the Power Apps product. There's what we call as canvas applications, model-driven applications, and Power Apps portals. And today, Fusion5 would be focusing or demonstrating part of Power Apps portals. So canvas applications are essentially your pixel perfect applications that you can drag and drop elements onto the screen and really create those very rich interface mobile applications. Model-driven apps are built on top of a data model, and they're based on a data structure that really allow business process flow guidance. So I've got a couple of examples on the screen here. The mobile app that you see at the top is a great example of a canvas app. However, the screenshot below that is essentially an example of a model-driven app. Now, the third product in Power Apps, which I talked about, was Power Apps portals. Power Apps portals think about them as responsive websites that really allow users external to the organization interact with data stored within your organization. So Power Apps portals uses the same sort of component framework that Canvas and model-driven apps use, but it's essentially letting people external to your organization really interact with the data within your organization. Power Automate is essentially your workflow automation tool to help create automated workflows that orchestrate across services using integration connectors. Users can start workflows on demand, or they can be triggered through an action, and that can trigger certain actions across different systems. We also recently included the concept of robotic process automation to really automate repetitive tasks performed through a browser or user interface of a Windows app without being able to use a connector. So if you think about the Power Automate family, we've got Cloud Flows, which is essentially your workflow automation that can trigger actions across different services. And then we have robotic process automation to really have that UI flow or essentially automate repetitive tasks through a Windows, through a browser or a user interface of a Windows app. Lastly, we have Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agents really empowers users to create powerful bots through a drag and drop interface. So gone are the days where we kind of had to start with a bot framework. We still have that, but Power Virtual Agents is your entry level into creating bots quite quickly. A great example that we saw of Power Virtual Agents during COVID was with one of the universities when we first went into lockdown, was receiving approximately 300 inquiries every single day, and their student services team wasn't able to meet the demand or to respond to every single inquiry that was coming from students about, is my course still going ahead? Am I coming to campus? What happens to my classes? And so this particular university deployed a Power Virtual Agent within 10 days to really be able to respond to all those frequently asked questions that students were asking as we had hit lockdown last year. Going into the foundational elements of the Power Platform family, what makes it truly low-code apart from Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent is essentially a set of pre-built connectors. And this is what makes integration quite seamless and easy within Power Platform family. So we've got about 400 plus connectors into various data sources. So think about, if you have built an app that may require integration with likes of Salesforce, ServiceNow, Oracle, or needs to store data or grab data from SQL or store data into Azure. We have about 400 plus connectors that can easily help you connect into various data sources. And these connectors is an ever-growing list. So happy to share after I present a list of these connectors to really see, how you can actually extend the capability by accessing data from various data sources through these connectors. We extended the capability to make it truly low code by also adding an element of artificial intelligence into the Power Platform family. Traditionally, when we talked about artificial intelligence, we used to think that, oh, this is something that data scientists can do. However, what we've done in the Power Platform is create a bunch of pre-built AI models that can really help create rich interfaces or rich functionality when we're building Power Apps or leveraging Power Automate. To think about some of the pre-built models, we have things like text translation, forms processing, sentiment analysis. We have a lot of these pre-built AI models that are ready to use to be trained that you can actually start using in your applications. On the next screen, I've got an example of a forms processing AI builder model. So forms processing really lets you grab information from paper or PDFs and read that information and store that into a data source, right? So think about a use case such as invoice processing. If you're receiving a lot of invoices, how do you actually process that invoice? You could possibly use the forms processing AI builder model to really grab that information and store it into a database for analytics and insights. Lastly, I want to talk about the industry accelerators that essentially makes the Power Platform family quite compelling. So up until now, I was talking at a really platform level where you still need to build solutions that were very specific to industries. What we did was, on top of Power Platform, we essentially created what we call as the industry accelerators. These are data models and solutions that have been built on top of the Power Platform that are very specific to industries. One such industry accelerator is the Education Accelerator, and we have a K-12 accelerator as well as a higher education accelerator. This accelerator essentially provides a data model that's very specific to the education industry and also comes with a lot of scenarios that are very specific to K-12 industry as well as the higher education industry. Fusion5 will talk a little bit about how they've leveraged the K-12 accelerator in a scenario that they will demonstrate in a few minutes. I want to just wrap up before I hand off to Fusion5. I want to wrap up by just putting this in perspective of education. What are the use cases that we are seeing in education? And we've broadly classified the use cases into two key areas. We talk about student experience. So a lot of the use cases that we are seeing in education are around student experience, whether it's inside the classroom experience or outside of the classroom experience. Inside of the classroom, we are seeing teachers really innovating and creating power apps to enhance teaching and learning for students. Outside of the classroom, we're seeing apps being built to transform the engagement that the student or the parent has with the school, with the university. So these might be, student services related apps being built across schools or in higher education sector. The other big category of where we're seeing a lot of these use cases are around staff experience. So how do we really bring that process reform in staff experience? How do we save teachers' time? How do we build apps that can digitize forms and processes to ultimately save teachers' time and really let them do what they do best? So we're seeing a lot of use cases in staff experience, not just around academics, but also for corporate staff. How do we actually, bring automation and digitization into the back office operations around finance and HR? So these are the two broad categories that we are seeing in education for use of the Power Platform. And just to give a functional overview of these use cases, here's what we call as an education capability map. So if we think about all the functional areas where we put a digital transformation lens in education, we've sort of plotted out where we think things like Power Platform and Dynamics 365 can play a part. And I guess our intention is that in the future sort of community calls, we'll touch on a lot of these areas to demonstrate the capability of Power Platform and Dynamics 365. But today, I'm just going to highlight some of the areas that, and it's a great segue to hand over to Brad at this point, to essentially, of all the things that you can see on the screen, we're going to just pick only a couple of things. So today, we want to focus on how you can leverage the platform and the capability to really enhance communication with parents, and how do you essentially build that parent portal capability, but also how do you manage events within the school, and how do you actually leverage that K-12 accelerator to bring that capability to life. So with that, I want to hand over to Brad to do a bit of an introduction to Fusion5 and do the demonstration. Over to you, Brad.
Great, thanks, Vanessa. If I could go to the next slide, please. And next one. Okay, Fusion5. For those who haven't heard Fusion5 before, we've been around a long time. We've been in the industry for 18 years, 550 employees. Of that, about 150 employees are in the Dynamics area, so in the area we're talking about here today. In terms of how we rank, we are in the top 1% of Microsoft partners in the world, which puts us in the inner circle. We've got a close relationship with Microsoft, and we've been doing that for, I think, 4 years running, which is fantastic. We are spread out over New Zealand and Australia, focusing on 9 cities with over 900 current customers. So there's definitely a lot going on in the industry at the moment. If I could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so today we'll be covering a few scenarios. We know that a student life cycle extends beyond just being a student. It's about making sure that we have identified prospect students, they've onboarded appropriately, we are managing them from a communication point of view while they are a student, and of course then transitioning to alumni. We've been dealing in a lot of those areas in the work we're doing at the moment. Today I'll be focusing on the current students, in particular the parent portal. What we found is that as we go talking to different schools, public schools, private schools, and central bodies such as departments of education, themes are coming up. And the themes that we are finding are causing the most pain for people at the moment are the fact that families are not the nuclear family of the 1950s anymore. It's not mum, dad, 2 kids and a dog. Families nowadays are complex. We have to have systems that can respect that and in some cases enforce that. Some of the older software that's on the market already, they're not handling that very well. It's leaving schools short and having to do a lot of administration to get around that problem. The other one I've personally experienced, is when you are given a login to a portal, if there is one, you are given a child access code. You log in effect, as the child. So if you've got 3 children, you have 3 logins and 3 passwords. And once you do log in, the portal doesn't actually know who you are. They just know that you're dealing with a student. Which parent is it? Is it a guardian? Is it someone else? They don't know. That's causing problems further down the line, which I'll get into. The other issue is communication. It's one thing to say, here's a blog. That's pretty easy to do. It's one thing to post an article or send an email. But what happens when you need a call to action? What happens when you need to contact a parent and get them to do something? Giving consent to a wide range of things is a really common request, and for duty of care, we've got to get that right. But if you're logging in as a student, how can you give consent when I just have to trust that you say who you are? You know, I'll type in the name of the person giving consent. That really leaves us exposed. So we need to think differently about the way we communicate with people and the way in which we record transactions. Managing events can be an overwhelming burden on schools. We have a lot of events that are fast and furious, and that teachers perhaps may need to do twice a year. It's got to be straightforward. It's got to have the ability to ramp up. A big event is very different to a small event. And it's got to have the flexibility and the power to make sure that it's meeting current needs. COVID has given us a real wake-up call as to the way we run events and the way in which we have distributed systems. I have to be able to do something at home that I can do at school. Those kind of challenges have really focused our attention on some really key areas. And the accelerator, the education accelerator from Microsoft, has really grown in that area and is really supporting distance learning and distance communication really well. Most importantly, particularly for central reporting, there are a lot of forms. Some are digital, which is great. A lot of them are still paper-based forms though. So how do we get to the point where we are moving away from manual handling of forms, where we can handle them centrally, easily, with data pre-populated, and hopefully processed and sent to central agencies automatically, or interacting with your student management system. So let's look at how we are going to do that today. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, that's more information. I've gone too far. I will share my screen. Okay, what we have here is a generic version of the parent portal. It's debranded, so naturally, of course, it will have your colors, your logo, your images. This is just a mock-up to give you an example of what we've done on the parent portal. We are given a parent portal as part of the accelerator. That got us, as it's supposed to, 80% of the way. That last 20% is very much specific to the school you're talking to and the individual needs of the school cluster, or whether it's private, whether it's public, what the requirements are. So we have the flexibility to grow to the needs of the school. That's really important because a lot of pre-canned systems will say, well, you know what? If the system doesn't meet the way you like to work, well, you'll just have to change the way you work. We've taken that approach, turned it on its head. The system grows to work the way that you are supposed to work because we are all different for good reasons. A couple of things I'd like to point out with my hypothetical here. We have Thomas, who is the parent. He is logged in using LinkedIn, Google. He's using one of his logins. He doesn't have to remember another username and password, thank goodness. Thomas has 2 children. He doesn't have 2 logins. And actually, if we do go to Thomas's profile, we can see that not only do we have information about Thomas, but we've got the 2 children there as well. For people who are funded under this particular model, Thomas's profile can be used to work out your school funding as well. So if you receive funding based on the education category and the job classification of the parents, you can use this to collect that information. Naturally, when they land, you want them to be on some kind of a dashboard where the information that needs to be brought to their attention is in one place. On the left, we've got the standard blog. There's no real surprises there. It works as a blog should. Let's focus on the fun stuff. Over on the right, we've got 2 main areas here: parent consent required and my upcoming events. In effect, this is parents, you haven't given consent, whereas this is parents, you have consented to your child attending this event. Giving consent is as easy as clicking a button, which will take you to a screen with more information, and you can then make that decision as to whether you say, yes, I give consent, or no, I don't. Once you do give consent, it moves to this area where you can download an ICS file and have it added to your calendar. One of the messages we're hearing, and a lot of us are experiencing, is that we are time poor. If we are managing more than 1 child and trying to manage school commitments, we need to have a system that does not waste our time. So to be able to easily add it to our calendar is really important. I also have the ability to change the student, which I will do in just a moment, but let's have a look further down. General events. Not everyone needs an invitation to every single event. You don't need an invitation to the school assembly. So the system has the ability for you to add an event into the calendar where no consent is required. It can just go straight into your calendar. This is a snapshot of the next 30 days. It's not a long-term calendar. It's bringing to the parents' attention things that need their attention right now. I'm going to change from Anton to Charlie, and I'm doing this for a specific reason because Charlie has a medical condition and his medical plan has expired. So straight away, we need to be alerted. We need to tell the parents that they need to go and update the medical plan. When I usually talk about this feature, all the people from administration usually sigh and say, oh, thank goodness that we don't have to chase these people up anymore. One thing you will notice is that with Charlie, we can no longer give consent. This is the incentive for parents to get out there and update the medical plan. They can't say, oh, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week. Meanwhile, Charlie is missing out on events. Of course, we also have the ability to have automatic reminders go out, but when it's stopping their child from attending an event, that's usually a really strong encouragement for a parent to get in there and make the changes. Let's go back to Anton. Let's go have a look at Anton. I've mentioned before that families are more complex these days. So what does that look like? And how do we solve that problem? With Anton here, yes, we've got the normal details here, but we've also got his relationship with parents and guardians. Here is where it gets really important. A lot of the systems we're dealing with will give you, say, two choices. A grown-up is either a parent or an emergency contact. But realistically, that does not describe what's going on. So what we have here is that Anton has a number of people involved in his school life. He has two parents where the role is parent and their authority is a full authority. Why is that important? We are breaking the link between the fact that you're a parent and the fact that you can act on behalf of this student, because that's not necessarily the case. We could have step parents involved. We could have court orders involved. We could have the ability to say, well, Susan may be a parent, but Susan has no authority to act on behalf of this student due to a court order. We've got a guardian in place here for a set period of time. This is also a really common problem people are struggling with, where a parent goes overseas, say, when we used to be able to go overseas, for a short period of time, and they appoint a guardian while they're away. The system should be able to handle that. And we have an emergency contact whose authority is limited to being able to take Anton from school in an emergency. Breaking the relationship and the authority level means that all of a sudden we can accurately record the family structure with Anton and not have to worry about how it affects their authorities. We've built this system so that what it can do is take the basic authority levels from your current student system. If you have, say, two choices, great. We'll take that information and bring it into the portal and enforce it. But then if you need more richer ways of describing people's authority level, this system kind of wraps extra functionality around the outside. So where your current system is coming up short, instead of throwing your old system out, this system will extend and give you the extra features that you need at the moment to meet the demands that parents expect of you. Okay, so consent is very much tied to events. I'm actually going to go into the back end now. One thing that we really have decided to do is to keep the parents portal about parents. And the back end is about staff managing things in a more complex and powerful way. That means the parent portal isn't becoming a de facto staff portal. It's focused 100% on parents. So in the back end, if we had an event, I'm going to go and have a look at some events for Anton. And if we had an event in here that was the rowing list, what would that look like in the back end? Here is how the event looks out in the back end. It's a big screen with lots of complexity. This is all the features turned on. We have the ability to create really pared down simple versions of these forms if that's what's required. But if you are, say, a full-time event manager, you would want to have complete control over large events that you're running. So this is an example of a complete control event where you've got every feature. Your event can go through certain stages, and each of those stages can have certain requirements. So just by setting up the event, you can automatically have approval paths set up so that you don't have to sit there and say, what's the next thing I have to do? I haven't done one of these events in 6 months. I can't remember. If anything, hit the target with your mouse, and that will tell you what you need to fill in to get to the next stage of managing this event. The K-12 portal works really well with Dynamics Marketing. So we've actually used the event management features in marketing to give us a whole lot of functionality straight out of the box that we really need for education these days. Some of the things I'll point out, some of them are from the accelerator, some of them we've added ourselves. The ability to provide coordinators approval, that will trigger email notifications for people to come in and give formal notification. We have the ability to set layouts on rooms for events. So if you've got people who set up rooms for you, often it's really hard for them to kind of guess based on an event title what needs to be set up. So we can actually have layouts set up for them with photos attached and floor plans, so they know exactly what they're doing and they can tell how much time they need. So you can not have overlapping events where people are wanting to come in and move chairs around.
Brad, just a quick one. It's Megan. We don't see that
Sure.
back. I think it might be on a different monitor for you. We still see the parent portal and contact details.
Oh, really? It looks like it may have frozen then. Okay, fine.
Resharing.
That's a good idea. Thanks for letting me know, by the way. I would have just kept on going.
Thank Travis Smith. He brought it up.
Well done. Okay, how's that? Are we back?
We are back. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with the layout, we do have the ability to, as I said, have floor plans to make life easier for everyone. Room setup required. This was a good one. So by ticking that, we actually create an activity, assign it to the team that sets up the rooms, and they have a dashboard that they can come into and see all the work that's upcoming for them. So they can plan their work based on just ticking that box. No need for extra communication, no need to remember, oh, I forgot to contact them and now I'm in trouble. Catering has been a really interesting one. For some events, we need to add catering, and the type of catering depends on the approval. This has been a point of discussion rather than something we're rolling out right now, but it's been fascinating to see the complexities around catering and making sure that the right hoops are being jumped through for the right event. So we do have the ability to show that. For the Facebook people out there, of course, we have a timeline. And the timeline, just like as in Facebook, it shows everything that happens with this record chronologically. So you can very quickly and easily get the story of what's going on. But most importantly for these COVID times, stream this event online. To be able to tick a box, and because of the integration with Teams, we have the ability to use Teams to stream events. It could be parent-teacher interviews. It could be webinars. It could be introduction to new parents. This is a fantastic feature and one of the real benefits of using a platform where so many things are provided for you straight away. You can just tick a box and use them. This has been a really popular feature. Okay, so in the events, we do have the ability to see who's registered and who's accepted. This can get to very complex events. Think about things like open days. I worked for a large university who in one open day would take hundreds of thousands of inquiries and take thousands of registrations. If I'd had a system like this at the time, I would have been very, very happy. So I can see here straight away that we have two people that have been invited, both Anton and Charlie. Neither of them have given consent, and the events, well, it's already started, so they're in trouble. They're not going to be going to that event. If we go in there, of course, we get further information such as QR codes and all the good things that you would expect from everything from a simple event through to multi-session, multi-stream seminars. It really goes as complex as you need it to. So one thing I will do is go back to the portal, because I do want to go away from events now and talk a little bit more about forms. So with our good friend Anton, I'm going back to his student area. And we do have the ability to create a medical plan. Now, this is a very complex area and everyone's medical plans are usually different. So we do expect this to be customized depending on which school we are dealing with. One thing that I would like to draw your attention to, though, is this: signed by Thomas. We already know that Thomas is going to be signing this if he submits it, because Thomas is logged in. This has been the missing link in so many systems that we have seen so far. And let's think beyond medical plans. Let's think of the stack of forms that we have to fill in. Realistically, often the format of the form is not the important bit, it's the content within it. Now, if I know that Thomas has certain information and I know certain things about Anton, why am I asking for them again and again on different forms? I can pre-populate any forms that are available on this portal using any information that's available in the portal or even in the backend. That's going to mean less typos, less trying to work out parents' handwriting, which is challenging at the best of times, especially mine. And just the efficiencies of knowing that the parent can get prompted, you can put news about the forms that are due, you can have them give consent, and everything is collected digitally and stored centrally. All of a sudden, all that pain of dealing with faxes and kids forgetting to put forms in at the office, that just goes away. Do we have any questions? I'm just keeping an eye.
I think we're all good so far. They've been listed in the chat, so all good.
Very good, very good. Okay,
Right,
one thing
question, sorry.
Yes.
I think when you were referring to SISs and LMSs, Ivan had a question that which SIS and LMS we are referring to.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of dealings with different ones. So there are, I believe in Australia, about 3 or 4 that lead the pack. And we've had discussions around most of them. Synergetic has been one that's come up quite a lot. And it's been one that's got probably, well, we've seen a whole lot of possibilities for adding value to what Synergetic's providing. So we are working very closely with enriching what they can provide at the moment. And plus, realistically, a student management system should be inward focusing and it should be about the student within the school. What we're doing here is really focusing outward towards the community, but just relying on some of that information.
Brad, there's another question from Dean. Where is all the data going back to?
Excellent question. If it is some of this extra information that we're wrapping around your student management system, it will go to Dynamics. If it's appropriate for it to go to your student management system, it goes straight back to your student management system. So when Manassi was showing some of the Power Platform features, and she was talking about integration, that's one of the areas that we've used to take it through the Power Platform straight into your backend system. So there's no double entry handling, there's no retyping or anything like that. I can actually show an example of that right now. Timetable. This is information, some example information on some records that have come from a backend system. It's because of the spacing, of course, you can only have so much information, but it gives an idea of where the child needs to be on what day. And if we go and select a child, I always pick on Anton, we can see that where Anton has to be today, the room, what the room is called, what the subject is called, and basically, you know, when Anton walks out the front door and has no idea what he's doing first thing today, the parents can easily remind him. One thing that I'd also like to mention is all children. Let's see if I can find it. We're having some fun with.
Sorry to interrupt, Brad.
Yeah, sure.
Looks like your screen is frozen again, although I'm not facing that challenge. I can see
Okay.
screen moving, but I think some people are still having that issue.
Okay, I'll give it a restart just to
Thanks.
just to see if that helps.
Yep, excellent, better.
Lovely. Okay. One thing that we were experimenting with is parent-teacher interviews. So normally you have to go to a third-party product, possibly with a different username and password again, to register your child. So we thought, well, that should be part of the experience. It's a critical part of being a parent. So we've looked at easier ways of handling it where you can just say book and cancel a booking based on the classes that your child is enrolled in. Now, anyone that has more than one child knows that coordinating parent-teacher interviews is a battle. So to be able to select all children, and this is the parent-teacher night, and to actually work out where where your kids are supposed to be at what time, to make sure that you're not double booked, is really important. This gives you the ability to see your calendar for your entire children. It's about managing your life, managing your household, not managing your child one by one. So this has been something that a lot of people have been really positive about and really pushing. So that's all I'd like to cover with this particular portal today. One thing that is always on my mind, of course, is where to next. This is, of course, just part of the journey. So over the horizon, and it's not far over the horizon, we have onboarding, alumni, inquiry management. Schools get a lot of inquiries. How about we help them manage that more effectively? Everyone's pain point, laptop repairs. How do we keep track of that and give parents the feedback to know what's going on? Cross-school students. This one is really interesting. My child goes to school A, but school A doesn't offer a particular subject. So once a week he goes to school B. What do you share? What don't you share? How do you restrict it and how do you handle that? Really interesting problem. I haven't seen any good solution for that, but I'm working on it. The other really important thing is communities, because let's face it, a school is a community. We need to encourage the parents to form communities, but somehow protect the parents' privacy. Often what people would do is they'd give their email address and it would get shared amongst parents in the class or the soccer club. But we don't want to give parents' email addresses out anymore. There's an issue with that. So one of the really interesting developments at the moment is the integration with Microsoft Teams and the ability to form communities within Teams, even if you don't have Microsoft Teams. So that is definitely on the agenda too. And finally, of course, for everyone who has mandatory statewide reporting, we're looking at whether there is a need for parents to give information to us through the portal and inform a central body like the Departments of Education that the data has been updated. So discussions are continuing with that at the moment. So it's a really exciting area, particularly COVID has shaken us up and made us innovative and really focus on what our requirements are. But in terms of promoting a school image and giving parents the kind of experience that they expect has been a real challenge, and it's been a fantastic, fascinating area to be involved in. So with that, I would like to give my screen back and take any questions that anyone may have.
Dean asked another question around whether the calendar can be exported as a web link to iOS, for example.
Yes, it can. It's the calendar synchronizing and the possibilities with the calendar. We're just at the tip of the iceberg right now. We want to be able to have calendars that can integrate a lot more natively with a lot more platforms, but we've just got to make sure that we're tackling the right features in the right order. But it's definitely on our list. Yes, thanks, Michael. I must admit, this is a really exciting area because the more you see, the more you can imagine. Room bookings, people being available, resources, support staff, handling of support teachers, identifying of special needs, to identify where we need extra help in classrooms, parents who have concerns about their children, how do you handle that? Using artificial intelligence, which Microsoft have invested so much in, to identify trends, to identify students who are at risk. Identify them before they become at risk. Those are very interesting areas. It's a fascinating world, and I just look forward to diving into it even deeper.
Thanks, Brad. I think just to add to that, there's a lot of capability that's actually available within the Dynamics 365 platform. And I was just going through some of the use cases as we were talking to a lot of schools, and I was just reading that list. So just to give you, just to extend to what Brad was saying, think about onboarding of staff and recruitment of staff, recruitment or enrollment of students. That's a very standard sort of Dynamics 365 capability. I'm looking at these notes from a few of our customers. Staff leave, accounts receivable, accounts payable, finance, budget management, online store for uniforms, right? That's also part of the Dynamics 365 capability. Brad covered parents and events management, student testing data. How do you actually bring that information and do intelligent insights around student testing data? Sports management, attendance, payroll, stakeholder management, asset management. I think as Michael said, the possibilities are endless. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and we want to use these community calls to showcase more and more capability. So just 2 minutes to spare. I want to thank everyone for attending the first community call. On the screen, we've got some links if you want to try out Power Apps, or if you want to know a little bit more about the amazing stuff that Fusion5 is doing with some of our education customers. Please feel free to reach out to Brad or myself or your Microsoft account executive, and we can certainly do a bit more deep dive into the capability that Fusion5 is building, or even just to walk you through the K-12 accelerator, because there is a lot of capability being added into the K-12 accelerator so that our customers can onboard these capabilities with a lot more agility. So with a minute to spare, I just want to see if anyone's got any more questions. And I can see Megan's shared a very quick form. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about that, please?
Or just about what people might like to see in the next community call. We can guesstimate what you'd like to hear next, but if there's consensus, we'd love to share that consensus in the next one. So yeah, it's just an open-ended question about what you'd like to see next. Fantastic.
Thank you, Megan. So we would love to hear your feedback in terms of what the next community call should address. But if we don't have any more questions, we can wrap up this webinar. Did someone come off mute? No. All right. We can wrap this webinar, and thank you again for attending the first community call.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great.